Money can't buy morality, but apparently it can buy road closures. Just ask the residents of Maui who found themselves trapped during a tsunami warning because someone thought property rights mattered more than human lives. This isn't another celebrity scandal about missed movie premieres or Twitter feuds. This is about real people, real danger, and one of America's most beloved media icons making a decision that could have cost lives. And when the dust settled, it took a basketball player to say what everyone else was thinking. Jayson Tatum doesn't usually make headlines for anything other than his killer crossover and clutch shots. But last week, he stepped into a controversy that had nothing to do with sports and everything to do with basic human decency. Here's what went down. Tsunami sirens started blaring across Maui. Families grabbed their kids, elderly residents scrambled for safety, and everyone headed for higher ground. But there was one small problem. The fastest evacuation route ran through private property owned by Oprah Winfrey, and according to multiple witnesses, that road stayed closed for hours while people desperately needed to escape. Oprah's team denied everything, said they opened up immediately, worked with authorities, did everything by the book. Classic damage control. But the internet doesn't forget, especially when TMZ has receipts and social media is flooding with first-hand accounts from panicked residents. That's when Tatum decided he'd heard enough corporate speak for one day. What happened next turned a local Hawaiian crisis into a national conversation about wealth, responsibility, and what it really means to be a good neighbor when lives are on the line. Buckle up, because this story has more twists than a Tatum highlight reel. The crisis that started everything. Tuesday morning, 6:47 a.m. Hawaiian time. Emergency sirens started wailing across Maui as seismic activity triggered a legitimate tsunami warning. This wasn't a drill. Real waves, real danger, real panic spreading through coastal communities. For residents of the affected areas, the evacuation protocol was clear. Get to higher ground fast. The problem? Geography had other plans. The most direct route to safety required using Haleakala Ridge Road, a private access road that cuts through several luxury properties, including a significant stretch owned by Oprah Winfrey. Maria Santos, a local nurse and mother of 3, later told reporters, "We could see the road right there, but there were gates closed and security telling us to find another way. My kids were crying, asking why we couldn't just go through." Similar stories started flooding social media within hours. Carlos Mendoza posted a TikTok from his car. "Been sitting here for 2 hours. The road that could get us out in 15 minutes is right there, but apparently we're not important enough to use it." The timeline becomes crucial here. According to emergency services, the initial tsunami warning was issued at 6:47 a.m. Multiple residents reported that the private road remained closed until approximately 11:30 a.m., nearly 5 hours of potential life-saving access blocked. Local emergency coordinator Sarah Kim confirmed that alternative routes added anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours to evacuation times, depending on traffic conditions. "When you're dealing with tsunami warnings, every minute counts," she said. "Those extra hours could mean the difference between life and death." But here's where the story gets interesting. TMZ obtained security footage showing the road being opened only after "Just opened the road" started trending on Twitter around 11:15 a.m. Convenient timing, right? The footage shows security personnel removing barriers and directing traffic through, exactly what panicked residents had been begging for all morning. Local resident James Park, who live-streamed the entire ordeal, captured the moment perfectly. Now they open it, after it's been all over the news, after people have been stuck for hours. This is about public pressure, not public safety. Do you think private property owners should be legally required to allow emergency access during disasters? Where's the line between property rights and public safety? By noon, the immediate danger had passed, but the damage to Oprah's reputation was just beginning. Social media was exploding with anger, and the story was spreading far beyond Hawaii's shores. That's when Jayson Tatum decided to check his phone. Tatum enters the conversation. Jayson Tatum was supposed to be focusing on his ankle rehab, not diving into political controversies. The Celtics star had been keeping a low profile, working with team doctors and staying off social media while recovering from his summer league injury. But when his cousin Marcus called him Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. "JT, you seeing this Hawaii stuff?" Marcus asked. "This is some real messed up shit, man. People could have died because some rich lady didn't want cars on her road." Tatum started scrolling through Twitter, watching video after video of families stuck in traffic, elderly residents struggling to evacuate, kids crying in back seats while parents desperately looked for alternative routes. The more he read, the angrier he got. This wasn't abstract politics or celebrity drama. This was about regular people getting screwed over by someone with more money than sense. Friends who know Tatum well say he's always been sensitive to issues of fairness and inequality. Growing up in St. Louis, he saw firsthand how wealth gaps affected neighborhoods, how having connections meant getting help faster, how zip codes determined opportunities. But what really set him off were Oprah's initial statements to the press. Her team released a carefully worded response. Ms. Winfrey worked closely with emergency officials to ensure public safety while maintaining security protocols for her property. Security protocols? During a tsunami warning? Tatum called his agent, then his publicist. Both told him to stay out of it. This isn't your fight, his agent said. You're a basketball player, not a political activist. But Tatum had already made up his mind. When Power 106 Los Angeles called later that day for a routine check-in interview about his recovery, he decided to make it anything but routine. The interview started normally. Host Jay Cruz asked about the ankle, about comeback timelines, about the upcoming season. Standard stuff. Then, almost as an afterthought, Cruz mentioned the Hawaii story. What you think about all this Oprah situation, JT? You been following that? There was a pause. Not the usual media-trained pause where athletes think about how to give the safest answer. This was the pause of someone deciding whether to speak truth or play it safe. Should athletes stick to sports or use their platforms to address social issues? Is there a responsibility that comes with fame? Tatum chose truth. Man, that's not even about celebrity or politics. That's about being human. When people need help, you help. Period. The interview was about to become appointment television. The radio interview that changed everything. What happened next will probably be played in journalism classes for years. Tatum didn't just criticize Oprah. He dismantled the entire mindset that created the situation. Look, I get that people have property rights, Tatum continued, his voice steady but clearly emotional. But this isn't about someone wanting to throw a party on your lawn. This is about families trying not to die. Jay Cruz, sensing he had something special, leaned in. You think she should have opened that road immediately? Bro, there shouldn't have even been a discussion. The sirens go off, you open the gates. End of story. You figure out the legal stuff later when everyone's safe. But Tatum was just getting started. And then the excuse about security protocols. Security for what? What are you protecting that's more valuable than someone's grandmother getting to safety? The passion in his voice was unmistakable. This wasn't a calculated PR move or a scripted response. This was genuine outrage from someone who understood what it meant to feel powerless. I've been in situations where I needed help and couldn't get it because I didn't know the right people or have the right connections. But imagine being in that situation when your life is literally on the line. Jay Cruz pushed further. What would you have done differently? First gate opens the second I hear those sirens. Then I'm out there directing traffic, helping people navigate, making sure everyone gets through safely. That's what you do when you have resources and people need help. The interview clip was posted to YouTube within minutes. By evening, it had over 500,000 views. By midnight, it was trending on every social platform. Do you think Tatum's response was too harsh, or exactly what needed to be said? How would you have handled the situation? Comments flooded in from all sides. Finally, someone with a platform telling the truth. This is why JT is more than just a ball player. Oprah needs to hear this. But the response that mattered most came from Hawaii itself. Local residents started sharing the interview clip with messages of gratitude. Thank you for speaking for us when we couldn't be heard. The conversation had officially moved beyond celebrity gossip into something much more significant. The social media war. Within hours of the interview going viral, social media transformed into a battlefield. Tatum vs. Oprah started trending worldwide, but this wasn't just about two celebrities disagreeing. It became a proxy war over wealth, privilege, and social responsibility. Team Tatum mobilized fast. NBA players started retweeting the interview clip. Damian Lillard posted, "Sometimes you gotta speak up for what's right." Stephen Curry shared it with praying hands emojis. Even LeBron, who usually stays diplomatic, liked several tweets supporting Tatum's stance. The support extended far beyond basketball. Celebrities who'd been silent during the initial controversy suddenly found their voices. Mark Cuban tweeted, "Property rights don't trump human rights." Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez shared the interview with, "This is leadership." But Oprah's supporters weren't backing down quietly. Media personalities who'd built careers on her platform rushed to her defense. Gayle King posted a lengthy Instagram story defending her friend's character. Several media outlets published think pieces about athletes overstepping their expertise. The most telling responses came from ordinary people sharing their own stories. A teacher in New Orleans wrote, "Had a hurricane coming, and the rich neighborhood blocked access to their storm shelter. This happens everywhere. A firefighter from California shared, "We've had property owners refuse access during wildfires. Lives always come second to lawns for some people." Oprah's team tried damage control with a second statement, more detailed than the first. Ms. Winfrey opened her property to emergency vehicles and evacuees as soon as she was contacted by authorities. Any delays were due to coordination with emergency services for safety reasons. But the narrative had already shifted. Screenshots from resident live streams showed timestamps that didn't match Oprah's timeline. TMZ released additional footage showing security turning away families hours before any official coordination supposedly began. Should wealthy property owners be held to higher standards during emergencies? Do they have special obligations to their communities? The memes were brutal. TikTok exploded with videos comparing Oprah's favorite things to basic human safety. Instagram was flooded with side-by-side images of her luxury properties and families stuck in evacuation traffic. By Thursday, even mainstream news couldn't ignore the story anymore. The larger conversation about wealth and responsibility, what started as a local emergency response, had evolved into a national conversation about wealth inequality and social responsibility. News outlets began investigating similar incidents across the country, uncovering a pattern of wealthy property owners prioritizing privacy over public safety during emergencies. The Washington Post published a deep-dive investigation revealing dozens of cases where private property access could have reduced evacuation times during natural disasters. The data was damning. Communities with higher concentrations of gated properties consistently showed longer evacuation times and higher casualty rates during emergencies. Legal experts weighed in with mixed opinions. Harvard Law's Professor Sarah Chen argued, "Emergency access laws exist precisely for these situations. The question isn't whether property owners have rights, but whether those rights extend to blocking life-saving access during declared emergencies." Meanwhile, property rights advocates pushed back hard. The Liberty Institute released a statement warning against government overreach using emergencies as justification to violate constitutional protections. But perhaps the most impactful voices came from emergency responders themselves. Fire Chief Robert Martinez from Maui told CNN, "We train for situations like this, but we can't train around private property restrictions. When seconds count, bureaucracy kills." Tatum's interview had unlocked something deeper than celebrity drama. Town halls across Hawaii saw record attendance as residents demanded clearer emergency access protocols. Similar conversations started happening in other disaster-prone areas. The economic angle became impossible to ignore. Tourism officials worried about Hawaii's reputation if wealthy residents were seen as prioritizing property over visitor safety. Several luxury resorts quietly updated their emergency procedures to ensure full access during crises. Corporate responsibility experts noted that Oprah's situation highlighted a broader issue with celebrity philanthropy. "She's donated millions to various causes," noted NYU business professor Dr. Amanda Foster. But when faced with an immediate opportunity to help, institutional responses took priority over human responses. Do you think this controversy will lead to actual policy changes, or will it blow over like most celebrity scandals? What needs to happen next? The story had grown beyond any individual personalities. It became a case study in how quickly social media can amplify local issues into national conversations, and how athletes and celebrities can influence public discourse in unexpected ways. 3 weeks later, the Hawaii State Legislature announced emergency hearings on private property access during disasters. Maui County updated its evacuation protocols to include mandatory access agreements with major landowners. Oprah's team quietly signed new cooperation agreements with local emergency services. Jayson Tatum went back to rehabbing his ankle, but his impact extended far beyond basketball courts. He proved that athletes don't need to stay in their lane when basic humanity is at stake. The most lasting change might be in how we think about wealth and responsibility during crises. When the sirens go off, property lines shouldn't matter more than human lives. Sometimes it takes an outsider to say what locals can't. Sometimes it takes someone with nothing to gain to speak truth to power. And sometimes it takes a basketball player to remind billionaires what being a good neighbor actually means. Who showed more real leadership in this situation? The media mogul with decades of experience or the athlete who spoke from the heart? What does this tell us about true influence?